Welcome to the Life by Design podcast. We are your hosts, Jessilyn and Brian Persson. Are you and your partner looking to align your financial goals and build wealth together? Have you ever wondered what might be stopping you from confidently investing in real estate or growing your wealth as a couple? Or what feels so hard to get on the same page financially?
That's exactly why we created this podcast and the Riches, Relationships, and Real Estate program to help couples like you invest confidently and achieve both your financial and relationship goals. If you're curious to learn more, visit discoverlifebydesign.ca to book your discovery call and build your customized wealth strategy with us. Let's create the life you deserve together.
Today's topic is the possibilities in real estate part 3. This is 3 of 3. Recap, part 1, we discussed understanding your goals, what makes you uncomfortable, and what are you willing and not willing to do. Part 2, we discussed different real estate asset classes, understanding market dynamics, and leveraging real estate for lifestyle design.
A lot of topics there already.
I know. I'm super excited to get into part 3, but part 1, part 2 were also really good topics, and these are like bricks, right? Building the foundation, start here, move up, and introducing just different topics so you're aware of what's all going on when it comes to building your wealth.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to discuss the possibilities of real estate, because real estate is such a big game with so many aspects to it, not only technically, but like mentally and how it's going to affect your life, your family, your mindset. So you really have to consider the whole picture. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to invest in real estate and I have some money and let's go. It's like, what else around it? Hence, like topics like what makes you comfortable. Yeah. That is huge, because honestly, most people should not be in real estate. There's a certain level of grit that is required to be in real estate. And you need to have that grit if you're going to go off and do your own deals.
Yeah. And even all the topics that we covered in part 1, 2, and here coming in 3, under these topics, there's subtopics, and we don't even cover everything under all those either. There's still so many different options out there.
So huge. Yeah.
We encourage you to absolutely hear what we have to say, but go out and do some investigating and research yourself to understand what else might be out there.
Takes a lot of self-exploration to really nail down what you should do in real estate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so today we actually have 4 takeaways. I know we usually have 3, but we're going to roll into the first one here, which is creative financing strategies. Now, there are multiple different ways for creative financing. We're not going to touch on them all because firstly, we don't do them all. So some of them we don't have enough knowledge in to speak to, but we definitely have done some and still do some ourselves. And I mean, some of those could be a low or no money down options. I know I get approached quite often when I'm in real estate rooms asking like, how do you do it with other people's money? Or how do you do it if I don't have money? It's like, well, have you explored, firstly, how much money you might have? And I say that with considering using your own home, if you have a mortgage, your equity in there as a tax deductible asset. I know you can speak to this a little more than I can, but you can start even there without having to worry about going to other people's money or other strategies.
Yeah. And I mean, creative financing, people hear that and they get a little bit wary about it, I think. Yeah. But the reality is that it's not creative. It's just what you don't know what you don't know.
True.
And so if you don't know that you can change your personal mortgage into a tax deductible asset, so just to back up a little bit, like your mortgage is a liability. No one's paying for your mortgage except for you, and you're using after-tax dollars to pay for your mortgage.
Right.
So that basically is the definition of a liability. But if you can change your mortgage to both get a tax deduction and increase your wealth through savings, through like investments, then your mortgage, the same thing, same product, becomes an asset. And so sometimes it's just a matter of knowing how to operate on whatever financial strategy or real estate strategy you're going to attack.
Absolutely. I know there's also partnerships, and we've discussed this multiple times over different episodes, because we do partnerships and we understand the concept of whether it's other people's money or whether it's our money, we're partnering. It all depends, of course. Every situation is unique.
Yep. The reality is you need partnerships if you really want to grow big.
Yeah.
Because you personally are only ever going to have so much money. If you stick with your 9 to 5 and you have a really good paying job, you will be able to buy more real estate than the average person. But eventually you're going to cap out, and the money that you're making every year is just not going to exponentially buy more properties. Whereas if you really understand the game and you get into partnerships, then you can exponentially find a lot of partners that have a lot of money and help them build their wealth too. So it's a win-win for both you and your partners.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I know another one that we are currently working in is the infinite banking, you being the banker as opposed to, your big bank out there.
Yeah. I'm not going to go too much deep into it. I'll let the insurance agents who are trained in this go more into it. But effectively what it is that you borrow from a life insurance policy.
Right.
And you mitigate the amount of financing that you have to take on, and you end up being the financer yourself. So that's a really great strategy for you to not only potentially finance your real estate portfolio, depending on how you organize it, but you can also finance like your car and other things. And that way you are still gaining interest and money from the money that you would otherwise be paying to the car dealership or other places.
Exactly. Yeah. Your bankers or whatever that looks like. I mean, future episodes, I'm sure we'll speak to this more as we dive in deeper into this topic ourselves. But
again, the possibilities are endless, which is why we feel like we're really scraping the surface, but we want to provide enough to like open up your mind to the fact that you have things right in front of you that you can use in just a different way that is going to generate significantly more wealth for you into the future.
Exactly. Take these ideas we're talking about and go do your own research. Go investigate them. Go see how they can fit into your lifestyle, your wealth portfolio.
Yeah, we are not financial advisors. We're not recommending you to go down any path. You always need to do your due diligence when it comes to real estate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another takeaway under the creative financing strategies is building credit and using leverage. Now, this is a good one. And I say that because I know as a contractor, when we were a little newer into our real estate portfolio, you were an employee and you qualified way easier than I did. And I know we got to a point where we had a certain amount of properties and I was just stuck, like because I was a contractor, or it's called an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And so the banks did not favor my income the way it was showing. And so I had to take 2 years to clean up my corporate accounts and the way I paid myself and the way I did taxes to reflect that for the bank to be able to qualify more.
Yeah, the simple of it is that if you try to play a good tax game, which you were doing, you were playing a fantastic tax game, you're properly managing the taxes within your company. You play that good tax game, you're going to have a really bad loan game.
Yes.
And if you play a really bad tax game, then you're going to have a really good loan game.
So I wasn't paying as much taxes back in the days, but then I also looked like I didn't make as much and I didn't qualify.
And that's the problem, is that you were, from the government's perspective, it looks like you make less, right? Because you're managing your taxes properly. You're paying the least amount of tax you can legally.
Yep.
And here I am as an employee, and I'm paying significantly more tax.
Yes.
So my take home is a lot lower, but the banks were throwing mortgages at me like they were spears.
Exactly.
And yet you couldn't get anything. You couldn't get a single mortgage.
Even though I made really good money, my company had money.
The take home was better for you, worse for me. They wouldn't give you a mortgage. They would throw mortgages at me. So you really have to understand the banking and the loan system.
Yes.
And what's your long-term goals? And we actually purposely kept me as an employee for a little bit longer so we could hammer in a couple more mortgages before I quit and became a contractor myself.
Yes. So understand what it takes to qualify for mortgages and lending, especially if you're an entrepreneur or a contractor where it's not quite viewed the same as an employee, and just know that role before you decide to get into real estate investing.
You can significantly stall your real estate journey by doing what we did. Like, honestly, we stalled our journey by about 2 years early on. And that was because, as you mentioned earlier, you chose to go be a contractor, play a good tax game, make a little bit more money, and it prevented us from getting mortgages for almost 2 years until we could reorganize all of our finances properly so that the banks liked us. Again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you need to make decisions not only based on like how much am I actually going to take home, but what are my actual real estate goals? And are these going to sideline some of those real estate goals?
Yes. So moving on to the second takeaway, which is building a strong network. We always speak strongly to teams, having your team, whether that's your realtor, your mortgage broker, contractors, lawyers, property managers, you name it. You need a solid team around you to be able to have your real estate portfolio.
Yeah. So important. There was a time when I was getting really frustrated at having to like rotate through, like the worst of it was handymen.
Yeah.
Handymen would get good at their job, they would get too busy, and then they would no longer have time for me.
Yep.
And it frustrated the crap out of me. And so I was like just cycling through handymen like crazy. And then I realized that I didn't have a side hustle or a side investment with the real estate. I had like a business. This was early on in our real estate journey, where it was like, oh my God, like this is operating like a business. I have employees coming through my system, and I'm not just like going and looking for the next plumber or the next handyman. I'm actually looking really for the next employee that fits my business really well. And that's when we really started to dial in on mortgage brokers and realtors and like, who should we really work with?
Yeah. And I mean, we definitely have a team around us, but it's not just one. We have several realtors, several mortgage brokers, because it all depends on what our needs are, what areas we're in, but also for our clients, because we recommend them and refer them, but they have different needs. So depending on that, not everyone is the same. So we have multiple, even lawyers in our partnerships, just so it's accessible and available for us and for our clients.
Yeah. And we've done some very deep vetting of all the people we just mentioned, all the roles that we just mentioned. And the reason, and it's taken a lot of years for us to vet at this level and to gain the experience in order to know, like, what does it look like to have a good real estate lawyer? What does it look like to have a good plumber, even for real estate? Yeah. And so you do a lot of vetting. And so I would highly, highly recommend that your family is not the first place you start for any of these roles. Like friends and family, ask some very serious questions. Make sure they have real estate investment experience in their roles, even right down to a plumber. Like I would say that if a plumber can't like manage your tenants properly, i.e. like he's not presentable and professional, and you want this plumber to be showing up at your properties, then, and he's going to manage himself in his space, then he's not the plumber for you.
That's a really good point. And I say that because I mean, there's all kinds of wonderful people out there. But if you have, say, a plumber or electrician show up to your renter and it's a single mom with 2 kids and he looks sketchy, just as an example,
and you have never met him,
then you are going to scare your tenant. She likely may not let him in, which could cause delays and more problems. Or even if she does, she might be extremely uncomfortable, which could make her question whether she wants to stay there and who you are as a landlord. So absolutely keep in mind the business and the presentability and not just how they look, but how they speak and how they act.
Yeah. I know all of our professionals that show up at our properties. We know all of our lawyers, everybody from the top to the bottom. We know them quite well. A lot of them we've had dinner with. It's not just some contractor or some business that we've hired. We really go deep into like who they are and whether or not we want them showing up at our properties or not, or being in our business if they're a lawyer or an accountant, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Another good takeaway under that one is finding mentors or coaches. And I know we talk about this often because we are mentors and coaches, but you can learn so much from them and save yourself money and time. Like we made mistakes, and while there are mistakes now, we know now, hindsight, if we had hired a mentor or a coach, we would have saved ourselves time and a lot of money on some of our properties and the mistakes we made. But I mean, those again were our lessons learned. But
yeah, and it ties into finding your power team too. So your coach could be part of your power team, but one of the services we offer as coaches and mentors is actually our power team.
Yes.
So we recommend our lawyers and everybody else in the team to our clients, and it's interesting how people shy away from that. We find a lot of clients will be like, no, I got a lawyer. That's okay. And it's like, all right, well, good luck.
Well, and we've gone through with some of our clients and talked about mortgage brokers, lawyers, things like that.
Yeah.
And when they do say, well, if they've got one, we usually will vet with them to be like, okay, are they familiar with this, this, and this? And a lot of times they're like, oh, I've never even heard of that. Oh, no, they didn't mention that. It's like, okay, that's okay. Let's get you a second opinion. Like for a mortgage broker, for example, let's get you a second opinion with a mortgage broker who understands real estate investing. And then they always come back like so grateful and thankful because it opened their eyes to things they had no clue of and they weren't aware.
Yeah. And I mean, everybody goes through this phase of like kind of having to experience it themselves.
Yeah, they do.
And so what we do is we generally prepare our clients with a list of questions. It's like, okay, you want to go with this mortgage broker? Here's like 3 questions you should ask your mortgage broker, and come back and like be accountable and tell us what the answers to the questions were.
Yeah.
They come back and it's like, yeah, the mortgage broker didn't have answers for any of those questions.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, that he's not, do you understand now why we say he's not your mortgage broker?
So we not only recommend from within our circle, but we will help you vet yours to make sure that you've got what you need to cover your assets.
Yeah. And the occasional professional out there does match what it takes to be an investment professional, but very often not. Like it, and that's just part of the experience of like knowing how to vet these people and knowing how to build your power team. So a coach can really cut through that by, like us, providing you a power team or helping you actually very quickly narrow down who should be in your power team.
Exactly. So I'm going to roll into takeaway number 3, which is creating multiple income streams. We are super passionate about this. We believe, and we heard this from, of course, Grant Cardone back when we worked with him in 2020. He recommended having 7 streams of income. And we agree with that. And we definitely have multiple streams of income ourselves. But with real estate, there's active versus passive income. And that can be, so ours are more passive because we have rental properties, but we have friends who do flipping, which is more active, wholesaling, private equities, which we're in is passive again, but
private equities are probably the most ultimate passive income.
Yes.
Because me as a licensed private equities dealing representative, basically I do all the research and I present you all the details on the deals, and you just have to make a choice as to what fits your goals the best. But really the most active part of it is signing the paperwork, which can be extensive, but like, a couple signatures on paper is significantly less than having to answer telephone calls about tenants and plumbers and toilets and all kinds of other things. So your real estate business, if you do it yourself, can seem passive, but really it's actually fairly active. Whereas private equities is a truly passive, completely passive game, and you still get to invest in real estate.
Oh, absolutely. And so just kind of to delve into that a little bit more, passive versus active, how you want to look at it. When you're buying a property and you're a buy and hold, which we do, it's the game itself is active really up front, of course, because you're buying and you got to look at all these properties, deal with your lawyer, your mortgage broker, you got to have it inspected, all these wonderful things, and then you got to do any rentals you're doing, get your renters in there. That's very active. After that, it becomes a little more passive. I mean, you got to check in on them and you got to make sure they're paying rent and stuff like that. Versus flipping. Now you're full on renovating that thing. You're in a certain time box, whatever you set based on however you have that funded, and you need to flip it. Otherwise you start to lose money because of course you borrowed to buy it. That one's a lot more of an active game, and that's almost like an active business. Whereas ours, we actively chose to have passive, like buy and hold and the private equities, because we already have full-time day jobs and companies and businesses. And so we didn't want to have these streams of income to be super active.
No. And not only is it active on your time, it's active on your taxes too.
Yes.
So the government looks at things that basically cycle too quickly. So flipping, wholesaling, things that have a really high cycle, like you're not going to buy a house in a buy and hold strategy, you're not going to buy it and sell it within a year.
No.
That's not buy and hold. But flipping, you are very potentially almost always going to do that.
Yeah.
And so the government looks at it differently, and they end up taxing you differently on it. So you can actually suffer through taxes in that case if you're not careful as well.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And you want to make sure you diversify, like spreading the risk across different asset classes and markets. And that's why we do buy and holds, not just with suite of properties, but we're moving into multifamily, but then we're private equities, but not just one. We're in at least 3 or 4 different private equity type options, because we believe in diversification.
This is why you have roles in the relationship, because it's 3 or 4. It's 3.
Whatever.
So someone has to know where
I knew my money was somewhere.
Yeah, but that's a really good point, as to like you're a very good driver for a lot of the initiatives on this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm kind of the box that holds it all together and like understands what's in the box. And the roles don't overlap between the two of us. So, the way we've diversified is started and like vetted sometimes by you, but then I am the one who actually like manages the diversification of it.
Yeah.
And that's really important, because, why should we both be working on the exact same thing at the exact same time? That just seems like doubling of effort inside of the relationship.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Taking 2 efforts when I can be doing other things that makes money.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And then just filtering that into our wealth, right? Like, and then you know what to do because you've already diversified. You understand the markets and where their gains are and what's working well for us.
Yeah. And like we are fairly well diversified. We have two completely separate and non-correlated sides to our company. So we have the coaching side, and then we have like a more professional management side of the company. Plus we have invested into buy and holds in our local area. Plus we have the private equity. We even have land in Romania. So like we're kind of like all over the place on how we've diversified, and you can clearly, and when you actually get to this point, it's very interesting to watch your portfolio, and then you start to understand why you need to diversify. And it's like we said earlier in the podcast, sometimes you just need to experience it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about spreading the risk.
Yeah. So people understand diversification, but then when you actually see it in action and you're like, oh, I get it now. Like 6 out of my 7 streams are doing really well, and this 7th one tanked, right? And then 5 years later, that 7th one is like booming, and some other one tanked, right? So you have this beautiful little balance between all your diversifications in your portfolio.
That's a good way to put it, because like I explain when I do my presentations and talks, is if you have multiple streams of income and one tanks, you're not suffering so bad, right? Whereas if you have one and it tanks, you are stressed out. You've got a lot more to do to get that ball rolling again. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, you can get nuanced about it, right? So inside of private equities, we have 3 different investments in 3 very different classes as well. One's a dental fund. Another is just a REIT, so basically buy and hold, like
a real estate investment
trust. Yeah, and then one is actually in long-term healthcare. So we have dentistry, healthcare, and like regular sort of regular real estate. And not any one of those is probably going to suffer at the same time. Like dentistry is more or less recession proof. So it's not going to, you're not going to get affected by that. Whereas your REIT is going to go up and down significantly. And you have this interesting diversification inside of like another higher level of diversification.
Yeah. And long-term care is going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
So
yeah, with the boomers coming, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Rolling into our 4th takeaway is measuring and celebrating success. So first thing you want to make sure you're doing is tracking your ROI, your return on investment, evaluating your progress and refining your strategies. And I know we did that. We, let's just say, diversified our real estate portfolio on the brick and mortar side because we had a mix of single family, condos, suited houses. And after, it's been over 15 years now, but we realized where the money was for us. And we got rid of all our condos over time because they were just not working the same way our suite of properties were. And that's where we went, okay, evaluate, refine, and now we're down just to suite of properties and moving into multifamilies because we've assessed that. But we figured out over time what worked for us and what didn't, so that our portfolio was always successful and growing.
Yeah. And remember, return on investment is a division.
Yeah.
So it's not just the money versus like how much you put in, how much are you getting out versus how much you put in. It's how much are you having to spend? How much time are you having to spend? What's the yearly maintenance? Like there's all kinds of things that affect your ROI. So if you're making a whole pile of money, but you're also working 80 to 100 hours a week, like what is your true ROI as compared to making a little bit less money, but it costs you, 2 hours a week?
Yeah. And we really started reviewing and analyzing that. I don't know when exactly. I probably want to say over the pandemic, where we
Definitely
just really started to understand and appreciate the value of our time and where we were and weren't willing to give it up.
Yeah, even things like driving. It's like, oh my God, like I have to drive to a rental property.
Well,
like,
we had one property that was 10-hour return trip. Like you lose a whole day.
Yeah. And so I got very good at delegating throughout that period. So even things where I had to drive like 5 minutes to a local rental property, it was like, no, my professionals can help me, and they can deal with the situation. And the ROI on our portfolio went really, really high because of that. Even though I was actually giving more people jobs and ending up having to pay other people to do things, it like the ROI went through the roof.
Yeah.
Because my time went down to nothing almost.
It freed up your time to work on other endeavors, making money other ways, or spending time with, of course, the boys and me, just to get that self-time back. But yeah, absolutely. Track your ROI and reinvesting for growth. So you want to use your gains to scale and diversify. And I know we've done that multiple times over and over, where we'll have a property that's doing very well. We will refinance, take it out, buy the next property. Yeah. We did that for several of our properties, and that's how we grew our portfolio as large as we did.
Occasionally, when I'm looking at our portfolio, I go like, oh, that's it? And then I realize that, and when I say that's it, I mean like, a lot of our properties we've used the leverage on our properties to buy other properties. Yeah. So a lot of them looked leveraged, even though we've had them for a number of years. And so when I look, if just when I'm looking at the surface layer of it, it's kind of like, like that's all we got in that. And then I remember, oh yeah, that property actually bought 2 other properties.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you really gotta track that. Like you gotta track not only your ROI, but what is ultimately, hopefully, your infinite ROI, where you've taken all your money back, or all your money has been reinvested multiple times, and effectively like can potentially grow at an infinite pace. Yeah.
I loved taking money out and buying more properties. I just thought, I was like, growing a portfolio.
Not only that, but here in Canada, when you borrow money, like say you borrow it from a mortgage and you reinvest it into something that is going to produce a cash flowing asset, then you actually get to write off the loan costs of what you borrowed.
Exactly.
Talk to your accountant on that. Yeah.
Yep. And lastly, under measuring and celebrating success, acknowledging your wins, celebrating milestones to stay motivated. And I know for the longest time, I'm not sure we did this, but we do now. But like, everything from when you're buying a property, of course, we celebrate because that's super exciting. When you sell a property, we celebrate because that's also exciting. But everything in between, like if you're deciding to do a reno and you're putting shingles on or new windows in, which can be a fairly hefty price, but celebrate because you've just increased the value of your asset.
Yeah, if you've done it right, you should always be increasing the value of your asset. And like the big thing here is that most people don't celebrate a lot of the wins. In fact, I was with my business mastermind the other day, and they're all business owners. They're focused on like exactly what they have in front of them, and they never look back, and so they never really see how well their business has grown or all the amazing changes that they've made to their business.
Yep.
Yeah, and I actually had to give them an analogy, and I'm sure I've shared this before, where you swim out to an island from the shore somewhere and you just look up and there's like another island there and you're like, oh, I got to swim to that island now. But you never look back at the 4 other islands you just swam from and the original shore you came off of. Yeah. So stop on those shores, look back at the shore you just came from and go, oh, wow, like I actually went that far. That's awesome.
Exactly. So celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. You put a new tenant in, celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to recap our takeaways from today, the first one was creative financing strategies. The second one, building a strong network. The third one, creating multiple income streams. And the fourth one was measuring and celebrating success. In our next episode, we will be talking about the true cost of ownership, which is one of 5 mistakes we discuss in our free giveaway, the 5 fatal mistakes when buying your first investment property. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Life by Design podcast.
Before you go, don't forget to visit Discover Life by Design to book your discovery call and build your customized wealth strategy with us. We release new episodes every 2 weeks, so be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app and join us on this journey to create your life by design.
Thanks again for listening. It's been a pleasure being with you today. We're Jessilyn and Brian, and we'll see you next time.